Hello everyone, welcome to Talk HR UK. My name's Simon Geere, and when I'm not helping HR directors, managing directors and CEOs source the best HR talent in the Southeast, I'm enjoying myself on these wonderful podcasts with great HR leaders. And today I'm joined by Simon Brown. Good morning, Simon.
Hi, good afternoon.
Welcome aboard. It's lovely to have you here. I've known Simon, and I should say Simon's been working with Alexander Lloyd way back since 2007, I think, when we first met each other.
Yes.
Simon now runs his own organisation, working in the transformation and HR change from a people perspective space. But equally, what I wanted to talk to Simon about today is a particular area of specialism he has within that broad portfolio, which is the HR shared services and HR systems space, because it's ever growing and changing, and I thought it would be really interesting for some of our listeners and watchers to hear a little bit more about this. And Simon certainly has done a lot in this space over the years. So I suppose now that's a great point to hand over to you, Simon. How would you describe what you do in the HR space, first of all?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Yeah, quite a broad remit, actually. So since 2010, I've operated my own business in HR transformation, and that's included setting up shared services centres. It's also included implementing HR information systems, and then actually quite a lot in the area of growing the roles for the new model. So primarily I work to the Dave Ulrich model of HR, where we have business partners, we have centres of expertise, we have shared services supported by technology systems, and then critically, including the role of the manager. So any person who has direct reports, we call a people manager. So yeah, my role is really to blend all of those together as the golden thread, and to transform the organizations primarily so that we can maximize talent, we can improve operational effectiveness and cost efficiency, and underpinned by more consistent, more standardized and more customer friendly services. So yeah, that's quite a broad remit, and typically since 2010 I've worked with quite large organizations, usually from the start through to the completion and then the evaluation of the new ways of working.
That's great, thank you. And as you say, they are some large organisations. I know over the years, people like, I think Coca-Cola was one I remember where you've done a lot of work, and I'm sure you will reference them today. GSK, Carlson Wagonlit, who I always smile because my wife works for one of their competitors, so I know that industry very well. But yes. Yeah, I know all these businesses obviously of a global scale, and as a result, with that Ulrich model, they have that HR operations or services piece. So diving into that, I suppose, we are post-pandemic and moving hopefully towards the light in that space now. The world has changed for many forever. How do you think HR services and operations functions will evolve as we start to come out of this pandemic era, really?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Simon, because I think as we all have experienced over the last year, and certainly it's kind of an anniversary, since March 2020, we've worked and we've lived in a different way to what we were doing previously. In the shared services space, what that means is that people that were working in one location together are now working from home and have been doing, enabled by technology. And in fact, what we found is it's possible to conduct business, it's possible to provide good services, and with the help of technology, we've continued, we've continued quite effectively. So I think for a lot of people, that means that, the paradigm of we must be in an office, we must be in the same office, we must choose a location where we can all be together, is now questioned. And as we start to see the green shoots of coming back to some kind of normal, I think that there's lots of conversations taking place about, can we work from home? Could we do flexible working? Could we do a blended solution, office some days, home working other days? It's kind of like have laptop will travel, with MS Teams and Zoom, anything can be done. So I'm seeing, a trend, which actually is a trend that I personally experienced several years ago. It is possible to think about this being a regular way of working in the future, that we don't have to be all in the same place, and that we can leverage, the technology that has been available to us for quite a long time, and we've got a lot used to, I think, in more recent times. And that kind of links back to a very early experience that I had. You referenced Coca-Cola earlier. Way back in 2007, I was asked to set up a shared services centre very quickly, not in a case of 6 months or 9 months, which has been quite a norm, but get it up and running very quickly. So at that time, we actually set up a virtual shared services. So we're talking 13, 14 years ago. The good news was that we had technology, so we had video conferencing. People did have, laptops. People could use chat room for conversations. So I set up a shared services team where primarily we just identified, first of all, where do we have the best talent, and where do we have language capabilities for our profile of our organization? Where do we have the significant customer stakeholders based? And then selected people who were customer service oriented, knew the HR processes, good communicators, and also quite good change agents in the sense that they would lead the new way of working. So we actually set up a virtual shared services centre, which we called the HR Network. And I ran this for 3 years in a virtual sense. It was supplemented by the fact that we had every 2 weeks operational excellence meetings by video conference. We got together. Every week I was doing one-on-ones, coaching and development sessions with individual team members. And every month we were reaching out to our stakeholders, either through video conferencing, primarily through video conferencing, to keep the contact and keep the communication. So that ran for 3 years. 0 labour turnover in that time in my team. Green lights on the SLAs, as they call it, the service level agreements, but more importantly, high customer satisfaction scores. So that kind of showed me it could be done. And then, of course, we went the way of more conventional way of saying, well, how can we reduce costs? We can reduce costs by going to best cost locations.
Right.
So, Eastern Europe, Asia, Latin America, these came up as regional locations to look at versus this virtual, pan-European team where we have people in Vienna, Berlin, Brussels, Athens, and London. So yes, I think, to come back to your question specifically, Simon, I think now, if you're in a situation where you haven't started on this journey and you're thinking of starting shared services, it really is quite a legitimate thought process to say, well, shall we start this virtually first? Shall we, quickly get the talent assembled at speed, low cost in terms of no additional hiring? Can we leverage our existing talent primarily in the organization? Do we have the technology to work virtually? And do we have a system, which will help us to run effectively, an HR information system, and indeed a customer service management system, so that employees can contact us wherever we are. And if the answer is yes to all of those, then it can be set up within a question of 2 to 3 months. And then what you would do, and I've seen this being discussed quite recently, you would use this as a way to build this new way of working, build some trust, pilot this as a methodology. And then at a later point, if you want to scale this up, then think about, shall we all move to one location? Can we choose a best cost location? We can talk more about that later. But yeah, I think the whole paradigm has changed. The new normal has got us thinking in quite a different way.
It has, and it's good to hear. I remember when you were doing what you were doing at Coca-Cola, it was quite new to me, and it felt like you were very much at the beginning of that. And now, there are a lot of businesses with shared services set up, albeit virtually, but more often than not, they do seem to be in a country, offshored. And I work with a lot of those businesses as part of their recruitment operations teams. I'm regularly working with a centre in, albeit Manila or Warsaw or wherever. I mean, are there any there's obviously trends there, but where if you weren't setting up a centre virtually, which I think is going to be a big consideration for organisations now, as you say, are there particular places you think people would choose? Does it matter anymore in terms of where the shared service centre would be if it was going to be in one place?
Yeah, I think it does start by looking at your own global footprint as an organisation. Where are you? Where do you do business? Where are your employees? Because ultimately we're providing a customer service, employee service here. What languages do we need to provide? And that tends to then drive the thinking to where can we find the talent? And often what we found, for example, if we're looking at Europe as a region, we've often found that Eastern Europe has been a great area to start shared services. In my own experiences there, I've set up shared services centres in Poland, initially in Warsaw with Coca-Cola, and then more recently in Wrocław, which is a second or third city in Poland. And then when I was with NCR, we set up a service centre in Serbia, in Belgrade in Serbia. The characteristics here were that they were all areas where there was a strong talent pool, so universities with language schools.
Right.
So we could offer 5, 6, 7, 8 languages from that centre, good graduate calibre individuals, at a cost which is effective to the organisation, because we spoke about talent, operational efficiency and effectiveness and cost effectiveness. Typically, these locations certainly are lower cost than Western Europe. Where we know Germany, France, the UK, for example, are higher cost. So yeah, for a lower cost, you can get fantastic talent with brilliant language skills. And so certainly that's a factor. And then look at the time zone. So from Eastern Europe, how far can you reach out to be in the time zone of the countries that you serve? And then equally, to your point about Asia, classically, I think Manila has been a centre. What you have to think about, though, is where centres get over-sweated or swamped. And an example there is that some companies would set up in locations like Manila or in Europe, in Budapest, say 10 years ago. But now, because so many companies are set up there, it's actually changed the equation, and it's become more costly to operate there as the war for talent circles upwards.
Right.
So I think that's why more recently, probably in the last 4 or 5 years, people are looking to go to second or third cities in these locations rather than the first or primary city. They still get a good catchment of talent. There's still proximity to universities, but yeah, at a lower cost and at a higher opportunity to retain good talent because the markets are not so advanced, let's say.
That's very interesting, isn't it? So there's a lot to consider, and yeah, certain locations, as you say, are now swamped. So people are. It's good because it grows economies, doesn't it? You know, locally as well, as well as providing that service to the organisation. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Serbia was a great example because that was what we call a greenfield situation, where the company that I was working with at the time weren't operating in that country at all, and yet it was a country that had come through that whole issue that we had in that region, and had some very well qualified individuals, but a high rate of unemployment due to the market being rather thwarted, from the war situation that they'd gone through. So going into that market first gave us a fantastic opportunity to hire very well educated, very talented, customer service focused people, and then from there the whole thing grows, and it's a cycle, isn't it? Other companies see the opportunity, and you then start to get a little bit of competition, hopefully healthy, but not too much competition.
Exactly. They all jump on the bandwagon. So, well, it's interesting. Because these are big projects, or certainly to me, these sound like large projects with a big overview. So, as you say, you've designed, you've built, and you've rolled out global HR shared service centres. How do you go about it? What kind of challenges do you come across as you go through the design and the timeline and the process?
Yeah, as you say, and it's a big program. It's not a revolution. It's an evolution over a period of time, and typically the journey from end to end has taken, in my previous experience, at least 18 months. So first of all, as an organization, you have to have the appetite for something that will extend over a long period of time. Starting point really would be to say, well, what is the business case for doing this? Why change? So is that sort of compelling reason to change from the way we're currently working? And if it's about we want to leverage technology more effectively, or if it's about we want to create more capacity for our HR team to be HR business partners and spend a larger percentage of their working day on the business agenda, working with the leadership team, coaching managers to be effective people managers, then there's a business case to say, well, let's create some capacity. And how we can create that is to set up shared service centres where we can offer transactional excellence, and we can be the front line or the front desk for standard employee inquiries, standard transactions. And by the shared services team then getting into that space, it really creates a compelling reason for business partners to help the organisation more at an operational strategic level. So that's one reason for thinking about that. Another one is, do we have, in addition to a business case, which, as I mentioned earlier, often is around right people, right place, right work, right time, right talent. It's also about efficiency. Can we standardize our ways of working? If we're an organization with many different locations or countries, we may find that, as I found in one organization, 49 different ways of working.
Ouch.
And that's a kind of complexity that you don't want to deal with if you're an international manager, or you don't want to deal with, if you actually have responsibility for programs across locations. So that's another factor, saying will standardization, will consistency help us to be more effective as an organization? And then, of course, as we mentioned, it's about cost and where's the best place to do this, and that's where the whole discussion around due diligence, do we do this in a low cost country? Do we have the talent? Do we have the languages? Are we operating in the right time zone? And then I think a big investment, as we mentioned earlier, tends to be about the HR information system that you choose, and we can come on to that. And that's quite a long process in terms of making the selection, and then altogether putting all of that together, where you've got, a business case which is compelling, a vision of where you want to go to, how you're going to measure it, then to make sure you have senior leadership sponsorship, change champions, because without that, the journey will be a long and hard and kind of like pushing water uphill. So get those things right. Now that can be, a process which takes months to do. And then, of course, you've got the whole selection and skills assessment in terms of, do we have the talent in the right places for the right roles, and what do we do to grow that talent and build that capability? And then, as you know, the implementation of an HR information system certainly takes 6 to 8 months as a minimum to do effectively.
Fraught with trauma sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes it's not. I mean, it's as I say, it's not about being a quick win. It's about recognizing that there's an evolution here, and getting it right, is so important. And not trying to run too fast, too soon is also very important.
Thanks. So now is probably a good time to move on to the technology piece, because there are lots out there. There are many different suppliers. There's there seem to be a big three, and then another, and they're all, whatever's right for your business is different, obviously, but they clearly play a very large role in your specialism. What are your opinions, I suppose, on some of the features and benefits of these large platforms? What are the disadvantages, if any, or are they all wonderful? I mean, I am an end user in some cases for some of these, and I have my personal favourites, let's say. But what factors influence the decision that a business should make when they're looking at rolling out a new HRIS system?
Yeah, I think the first thing to look at, and again, it's going back to your own footprint as an organisation. How big are you? How many employees do you have? How ready is your organisation for introducing some self-service functionality, direct access, it's often called, where managers can go in and do their own transactions, where perhaps historically HR did those transactions for them. So it's kind of looking at the readiness, looking at your footprint, looking at the size of your organisation. The big three, as you mentioned, which is Oracle, Workday, and SuccessFactors, where I've been involved in implementing those, tends to be in larger organizations. So typically, if your organization is less than 5,000, you may be looking at another solution. And obviously, how international is your organization as well? Oracle, Workday, and SuccessFactors are all proven as global solutions for large organizations. And fantastic advantages, I would say, in terms of helping the standardization process, helping this user experience process, where you can do transactions in the system rather than on an Excel spreadsheet or via an email. And provided that the culture is ready for this, in terms of managers accept that they could initiate a transaction to start a recruitment requisition. They can initiate, the onboarding checklist for the person they've hired. If the organization is ready for managers to be true people managers with that direct engagement of their team, then it really is fantastic, because it helps to clarify the roles and responsibilities. What does a manager do in relation to people transactions? What does HR in the HR business partner do? What does the HR shared services do? So that all those roles are clear. And the ability to produce reports, automated reports, the ability as a manager to view your own org chart and see how your employees are progressing with their goals, their objectives, their performance plans, and their development plans. Really gives people information at their fingertips. And so, yeah, I think if that's the context, then those big three certainly have their advantages. You've obviously got to look at what your budget is, and I'm not going to go into any details about that here, but it's a significant investment in order to get those advantages. But certainly in terms of helping to change the ways of working, I found that it does accelerate that journey and helps you move to, an organization which is more consistent, more standardized, and can do things quicker with a greater user experience. On the other hand, if you're a smaller organization, maybe you're a UK-based company with 250 employees, or I would not recommend those big three, and indeed those big three would not want to be recommended. So there's systems such as Bamboo HR, which has got a good reputation, Sage People, and that's where the Sage payroll piece has grown and upgraded. There's IntelliHR, Employment Hero, HiBob, it's quite a good name, HiBob, which is an HR information system, on Monday as well, which you can use every day of the week actually. And these systems they're cloud-based, and they're kind of pretty much set up for smaller organizations. And then of course your other choice is, which HR processes do we want to manage online? Classically everyone goes for what we call the core HR, which is all of the things relating to changes to information about people,
yes,
job titles, position, etc. And most people, go for the recruitment module, which enables them to, have a link with the career site, with LinkedIn, to do applicant tracking of all the candidates, to invite candidates to schedule their own interview, select from the slots that the hiring manager is available, and really sort of speed up that whole process. So core HR and recruitment tend to be definitely choices for nearly all organizations as a starting point. And then depending on where you are in your annual performance cycle, performance management or the annual compensation, merit and bonus processes are chosen as well. And then it's down to what else do you want? Do you want talent management in the system, succession planning in the system? Do you want learning as an online resource in the system? And then, of course, you get into things like what are the complexities, because the other factor, apart from how big are you and what are your requirements in terms of HR process support, is what are your existing systems? And moving from those to a new arrangement, or do we want to integrate these systems with payroll? Do we want to integrate these systems with our timekeeping and attendance? Do we have different systems for those? One organization that I did a little bit of consulting with, they had actually 8 different systems. So the challenge for them was, how do we integrate these systems so they talk to each other? How do we create single sign-on so that a user doesn't have to go out of one system and then put their password in for another system? And the goal would be to reduce the number of integrations you need to have if you can offer an holistic HR information system for most, if not all of those. But where you have integrations, to make sure they work effectively. Ultimately, the downstream of all of these transactions is payroll. And if we don't get that right, as Jeff Armstrong famously said, nothing else matters. So yeah, they're sort of key considerations, I would say, depending on the size of your organization, where you are in terms of your readiness the self-service, and what your budget is.
Thanks. No, it's useful information to consider. So in terms of setting up, there's often talk around sort of greenfield versus brownfield in terms of if we're looking to move an idea like this forward into a business. What are your views there? What do you think are the benefits of one over the other?
Yeah, and I've seen both actually. So I think both of them have advantages and drawbacks. So maybe we start with greenfield, and this is where your organisation is currently not in that location or not in that country. And as I mentioned earlier, with one organisation, we weren't in Serbia, but we went to Serbia because of the talent, the labour market, the language skills relevant to the university, and the significantly lower cost of doing business. The advantage of greenfield is you can be first to the talent market. If no other organisation is set up there, then you've got the pick of the talent. The other advantage is that it's independent of a particular current site or location. Occasionally I've seen organisations where their shared services centre is next door to the factory of one of their largest sites. Now, the challenge there is that does that site get preferential treatment because it's next door to the
I'll just pop next
canteen.
door.
Yeah, just pop next door to the canteen, and you meet them every day in the corridor. Oh, I've just got 5 minutes. Could you answer this question? Does that site get preferential treatment? Whereas if you're an independent site and there is no other business located there, then clearly you're focusing on providing us a European service or an EMEA service or a global service. Yeah, I had one brownfield site where we had to lock the door to avoid people walking in, with these, have you got 5 minutes?
Right. Okay.
Actually, I'm on the call to France at the moment. Could we talk later? So yeah, that's the greenfield advantage. I think the brownfield, where we already have a location as an organisation, the advantages are that we're already known as a company. So we already have an employer brand. So when we're going out to the marketplace to hire people,
from an attraction perspective, it's better, isn't it?
They know us. Yeah, they know us. Obviously, there's the advantage of shared co-location costs. We've already got a site there. We need certain square feet to set aside for a shared services centre. So it's a shared cost. I think also there's no hassles with establishing a legal entity. One of the challenges of greenfield site, you've got to establish the legal entity, and then you've got to set up banking, particularly if you're doing finance transactions in that centre as well. So yeah, pluses and minuses really, I think, of both. And obviously the other factor we talked about earlier is who else is there? What other organisations are there? Avoiding the swamped market, I think is key. I mean, finally, on the greenfield, another challenge is it's on the positive, it's very easy to get entry-level people, just graduated universities, fantastic language skills. But to get management staff at a senior level, if that particular country or location is new to shared services, is very difficult.
So no existing skill set to poach from, I suppose. Yeah.
That's right. Yes. I mean, for example, in one organisation, we were looking for people with strong Oracle system skills or strong departmental leadership skills. And because that particular country was new to shared services, there wasn't really a talent pool to draw from unless you import talent from other countries, at a higher cost, and with all the issues around visas. So yeah, I think that's the other point about greenfields. Brownfields, if there are other organisations, then obviously people that have grown from the first line front desk service into team leader roles, and then on to manager roles, or ready for manager roles, their next career progression can be, to join your organization as a manager.
Exactly, part of that natural succession cycle, hopefully, as you say,
Yes.
having the talent from another organization
Yes.
who've done that grounding. So
yeah,
good, interesting points, and yeah, key factors when you're making that selection. So when the site is, how do we put this? The site has been set, be it virtual or actual. When we've started thinking about the systems, obviously there's the knowledge transfer and the training of actually
yes.
getting this thing rolling and operating, which again, I can imagine there are some key challenges in that. What are your experiences of getting the knowledge transfer and training in place?
Yeah, and I've done this both in a pre-COVID situation and a COVID situation. So yes, prior to COVID, typically the best way of doing the knowledge transfer is for the new individuals who have been hired for shared services to go to the country where the transactional HR administrative tasks are going to be transferred from. So you go to the country, you understand the customer base of that country, the culture of that country. Right. You spend time with the HR leaders and the senior managers in that country so that you become known as part of their team. And then you do the classic train the trainer piece, where the person who's currently doing this administrative task will spend time with the shared services person who's the trainee learning this task. They'll sit together, they'll do descriptions of how the process works ends to end. They'll take screenshots of any systems related steps in the process. The trainee, the shared services person, will document these processes, usually on a desktop procedure, or DTP as we tend to call it, so that can then be used by anybody when we're fully operational on the shared services. They then play it back to the individual. Have I got this right? Have I missed anything? So that's quite time consuming, and can take weeks to do, depending on how many processes you're looking to transfer. So there's a cost investment there of the travel and the accommodation, but there's a real opportunity to build relationships with the country, particularly the managers, who will be using this service, and the HR business partners who will be using this service. It is always a challenge because often the trainer, who is the administrator, is handing over their job to.
Exactly. There's a certain discomfort there, isn't there?
It's a difficult one, and I think we have to be really sensitive about how that's managed. So typically we've coached the shared services team to recognise the fact that the person that you're going to be spending 3 weeks with is actually transferring their job to you. So normally it's really important to ensure that the individual who's the trainer and the transferer has their own situation managed effectively, that they have a clarity about their own context, what's happening to me, what do I do next, what support do I get, because obviously if you're training somebody, you've got to feel in the right frame of mind to do that. So it's always important to invest in providing the support and settlement for the individual who's transferring the work first. So yeah, recognizing all those psychological points, that's typically how we do knowledge transfer. The desktop procedures would then be brought back to the shared services centre, shared with the rest of the team, so that in the context of being contacted, any one of that team can answer the process steps or questions based on the standard desktop procedure.
Right.
Typically before go live, we'd have some kind of testing quiz, where the local HR team would test the shared services team on some of these processes that have been transferred, and we'd be looking for a test rate in terms of accuracy there. And if we don't get to that test rate of accuracy, we'd say, well, let's go back again. Let's look at some of these processes again. Let's make sure our desktop procedures are there. Let's make sure it's trained in. And only then will we go live when we're confident that the transfer is effective, and therefore the user experience for the customer will be effective. And then, of course, in a COVID situation, we do all of that virtually. So we don't go to the country. We don't meet everybody. We have MS Teams calls, and the challenge there is it's obviously quite a high level of concentration on a screen. So we typically tend to do those in 2-hour bites as a maximum.
Right.
Where we're allowed to record the training session, that makes it easy to ensure the quality of the knowledge is transferred, because you can just play it back afterwards, make sure you've captured everything that the trainer was saying. Where in some countries, for GDPR reasons, recording the session is not allowed, it just means that you have to have several toing and froing sessions to check that you do have accurate information and you have captured everything effectively. But yes, I mean, recently with a client, we've done knowledge transfer from Spain, Mexico, the USA, Poland, Sweden, and it's possible. Virtual working is possible.
Goes to show, doesn't it? It's changing so much. But
yes,
but it's important that you, as you say, that you get this knowledge embedded correctly before you go live. Otherwise,
absolutely,
day one can be pretty hairy, I imagine.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, go live readiness is quite a key part of this, and having a good stage gate to make sure that we are ready to go live, both with setting up shared services and knowledge transfer, and with the implementation of HR information systems.
Definitely. So there are obviously different ways of shared services offering its services to the business. There's the overall combined business services, or via separate functions, I suppose. What are your views on those different methods?
Yeah, so we hear a lot about functional shared services. So, for example, HR shared services. I think a lot of organisations have an IT shared services with a help desk service. What I've seen is, in some cases, it's an evolution. So an organisation, I'll take the example of Coca-Cola, we start out with setting up a HR shared services, and a finance shared services, and an IT shared services, almost like parallel tracks. And certainly there, I was talking a lot with finance as I was setting up HR, so that we did a consistent design, but there were separate functional startups. Right. Run it for a while, build the trust, build the reliability, make the continuous improvement. And then what we did there is, after 3 years, we then moved to what we call the global business services, where you have a single shared services which has HR, finance, IT, in some cases other functions like procurement, co-located, a single point of contact for the employee. So if I'm an employee, I don't have to go onto this portal for HR or that portal for IT. I just go onto the employee hub, click HR, click IT, click finance, and then go through to the transactional processes. So I've seen that trend, and of course the advantage would be for user experience for the employee. It's not complex. You don't have to think, well, who do I need to contact? I've got an IT problem. Who do I need to go? Oh, I've got a question about my holidays. Who do I go to? You go to one place. You go to the tier 0, which is the hub. Like Google. Can I find my own answers, or do I need to do a transaction in the system, or do I need to contact the service center? And then the GBS being that service center. Other companies, have learned from the experience of this journey. You get the early pioneers, the adopters, and the followers. I mean, the advantage of the follower is you can learn from other people's mistakes.
Exactly.
Or you can jump, straight to the end game. Or as my golfing friend would say, you can get a hole in one rather than mucking about in the bunker. But you can go, okay, based on the experience of this company, let's go straight to GBS and let's set it up. And the most recent client that I'm working with has taken that approach. They've gone straight to GBS with finance, HR, and procurement together. So from a user perspective, it's consistent, it's standardized, and the technology that supports it, is also not in a situation where it's different depending on what you want to do.
And when you stand back and envisage that, particularly in a large global, you can see the time savings, and you can see how it will improve that way of working. It is obviously going to change people's jobs in some ways, but because I've only really ever worked for smaller organizations, so I'm a spreadsheets guy. Do you know what I mean? But when I hear about these concepts, it just does sound like the way forward, effectively. And I suppose my last question, really, just for those people like me that haven't really ever worked with a shared service centre. I've always had local HR and so on, but there are ways that people engage with the service centre when they have an inquiry about be it holiday or pay or whatever it is. And I understand there's things like ticketing systems or live chats and chat bots and all these sort of things. What's the best way of working, do you think? What are the interesting developments you're seeing in that space?
Yeah, and again, as you said, we're talking here about the larger organisations. If you've got 100 people and one HR person, then the most effective way is go and talk to that one HR person in the small organisation. So these larger, in a way, it mirrors probably what we experience, all of us, outside of the workplace. Take the example of banking. We used to go and queue up to put our money in at the bank and wait for the cashier to be ready to see us, and maybe 10 people in front of us. Then we moved to the hole in the wall where we did our transactions in the ATM. And now a lot of people are doing online banking. Either my wife prefers telephone banking because she prefers to talk to the robot. And I prefer, PC banking where I can do the transactions from my PC. So I guess in a way, we're kind of mirroring what is our experience outside of work. And often we go to a help desk. And in this sense, the shared services team, the GBS team, is the help desk. There, where you go to when you didn't find the answer on Google yourself or YouTube yourself or on the employee hub or portal yourself. What we found is that probably there's been a sort of evolution here where originally these centres were called call centres, and that's often the sort of film images that you get from these massive call centres in India. Slumdog Millionaire, I remember that one with 1,000 people in the call centre. And we kind of get these images, but actually in a more modern context, they tend to be contact centres rather than call centres. And so usually the shared services people will be reached either through a ticket where the employee raises a ticket, this is what I need, and just specifies what they need. The advantage of that is there are quite a few prompts on the ticket so that it can then be categorized in terms of what service does this individual require. You press the button, immediately becomes tracked. So we know what time that ticket arrived into the shared services function. We then look at our SLAs in terms of response time. How quickly do we respond to that? Now we can do an automated response to say, thank you for raising your ticket. This is now with our shared services team. We'll be coming back to you at our earliest convenience to do so. At least I'm acknowledged. It didn't go into a black hole.
It happened, yeah.
Yeah. I didn't get passed around, different calls and listening to different horrible music. My ticket went in there and it was received, and they're going to deal with it. And then obviously response time, you can measure how soon was that responded to. For standard requests, we say within 1 working day. For more complex situations, it could be 2, 3, 4, 5 days, but at least you can manage that and track it. And that then becomes part of your metrics to show how effective was the customer service. And also you can add an after ticket. You press the button for the ticket, you get your response. You can then say, how happy were you with the service you received? We go for the happy smiling face, the neutral face, and the sad or angry face. And you just click one of those, and then you've got your customer sat. So the technology of ticketing is efficient. I've seen also live chat be very effective, because the advantage of live chat is it's a two-way dialogue. A ticket, you send it, and then you're waiting for a response. A live chat, hello, how are you today? I've got this question. Oh, yeah, pleased to meet you, blah, blah, blah. You're into a text dialogue straight away in live chat. And the advantage there is that sometimes any misunderstandings about what exactly is required can be sorted out. The other advantage is that the service team can share a link, as to where you can find the answer to your question, which then encourages people to go to the employee hub where the answer is there all the time. And that kind of teaches people to fish, and it encourages self-service for next time. And of course, the other thing there is that it gives you the opportunity to multitask. You can imagine a busy manager, they're raising their live chat, but at the same time they're talking to somebody else, and they're working on the email that they're sending to the director. So you can multitask, and so that's an advantage. And yeah, because both of these, tickets and live chat, are language specific, the good news is it's accessible and easy to use. So I kind of see it like probably those organizations that have live chat that's trackable. So in other words, as soon as you initiate a live chat, it starts the service level agreement. Live chat started at 11 o'clock, and you can then measure how long it takes. So long as your live chat is trackable, that tends to be the most popular because it's two-way. Probably 50% of users would go for that one. Ticketing, we're used to it because we do it for IT. So why not do it for HR or finance? That's probably about 30%. Email tends to be a lot lower, and we always like to have a generic email. So GBS, EMEA at, rather than Fred or Jane, so that it can then go into the in tray, and the team can, assign those tasks. That tends to be probably 10 to 15%, and then calls are very rare, because obviously, as we know, that's not the most efficient way of resolving these queries, if you can leverage the technology or the live chat to do so.
And you're right, it does mirror real life, doesn't it? I have to admit, there are well-known parcel delivery and retailers online that I recently did the online chat thing, and it was great. It was brilliant. And I'm an older guy, and I've done my time in call center as well, and if anything, I've got a bias towards that. But no, the tech has once again made things slightly easier for everyone, hasn't it? And,
absolutely, yeah.
And you're right. Why don't we apply this to our working life as well as our personal life? It makes perfect sense.
Yes,
and it's logical. Well, hey, Simon, I'm conscious of your time. Thank you so much. It's been a great kind of eye opener to those people that haven't had a great deal of interaction with the concept of HR shared services. Particularly the different ways of doing and all the things that we need to consider. But I guess if anyone's got any questions for you after to listening or watching this, I'm assuming reaching out to you on LinkedIn is probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely, Simon. Yeah, it's been a pleasure talking with you. And so if there's anything of interest where you'd like to follow up, you don't need to do a ticketing system. You can just reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Only on this instance you can
on this occasion. The system. Yes.
But hey, have a great rest of the week. And the sun's come out while we've been talking, so things are looking up. And again, thanks for your time. Cheers, Simon.
Okay, thanks, Simon. All the best. Bye.